Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Take Your Shot podcast. Of course, as always, I'm your wonderful host, Joshua Gitman, and we've got a lot of things to discuss in today's episode. We had a shocker in TD Garden. We had some teams who got must-needed wins, and we've got a team who has done what they have done in the postseason once again. We've got all of that in our Game 2 and early Game 3 recaps in today's episode. First of all, before we start, I want to congratulate the award winners, although we will not be diving deep into them because obviously it's the postseason time. Congrats to Tyrese Maxey for winning Most Improved, Stephen Curry for winning Clutch Player of the Year, and Naz Reid winning Sixth Man of the Year so far. And more awards are going to be coming on TNT each day they do their postseason coverage, so stay tuned for that. But now let's start with the shocker of the playoffs so far, where the Miami Heat go into Boston in Game 2 and defeat the Celtics, tying the series at a game apiece. The Miami Heat have struck again. It is Heat culture once again. Eric Spoelstra goes into the Garden and gets another win there with the Miami Heat. Now, if I'm not mistaken, that is their sixth win in 9 tries in the Boston Garden in the last 3 playoff seasons. So the fact that Miami has a 66% winning percentage there in the postseason is absolutely ridiculous. In this game, Miami shot the absolute lights out, shooting over 50% from the three-point line, which is something they have only done 4 times in the last 2 postseasons, which is not only, that's absolutely incredible. And what is an incredible coincidence is that 3 of the times Miami shot over 50% in the past 2 postseasons have been against the Boston Celtics. So, it is, again, a very good shooting night for Miami against the Boston Celtics. And Miami, when everyone puts them off to the side, Boston's about to sweep them. It's going to be over after that Game 1 disaster, losing by 20 and being down by 34. Here comes the Heat. The Heat are in this series, and they have now stolen home court advantage, and I just do not understand. Every single year this team is out of the mix in the regular season, and all of a sudden they just come back in the postseason, and they're doing it without this year Jimmy Butler, Terry Rozier, and Josh Richardson, who are all crucial factors to their offense, especially Jimmy Butler for the Miami Heat. And the fact that they went into Boston, shot the ball as well as they did, set up open shots for them. Even though Boston did say those shots were heavily contested, those open threes, I personally think, and according to the advanced stats metric, that 23 of Miami's 43 three-point attempts were wide open, and Miami hit over 70% of those. So Boston gave Miami open looks, and they were hitting them. And when you give teams open looks from the three-point line and they start hitting them, it works like other opportunities will be presented for these players to make shots that are more heavily contested, because once they get into a zone of making shots consecutively, it can get way easier to shoot the ball, and it can give a team a lot of life beyond the three-point line. And what was funny about this three-point performance by the Miami Heat, it's exactly what Boston did to them in Game 1, and Miami just beat Boston at their own medicine, which is shooting three-pointers. And I just don't understand how this Heat team continually, postseason after postseason, continues to stay in games, and it's unbelievable. And now we have a series. Not saying that Boston is in trouble quite yet. It's only one game. Boston can steal home court advantage back if they win one of the 2 games in Miami, which of course we all expect to happen. But this could potentially turn into something if Miami finds a way to get another game. And who knows, what if Miami shoots like that in another game against Boston? It's possible, because they've done it against Boston 3 times prior to Game 2. It is possible that Miami could win another game, and it's easier to win at home than obviously on the road. Even though Miami hasn't been a great home team this year, they still have the opportunity to go in at home, get a win, make this series at minimum a potentially 2-2. And when it's best of 3 and a series, things can get really interesting no matter how much better one team is over the other. A series can get very, very interesting if it's a best out of 3. And in this game, personally, in my opinion, Tyler Hero, we have not really seen the postseason lately. We saw him Game 1. He didn't really show up last year. Of course, he wasn't playing. 2020, he showed up a little bit, but he was a rookie there. And we really haven't seen him since 2020 have that mind-blowing playoff performance, be that guy that we expected to be for Miami, someone who can bring offense, someone who can be a third option on a team that is contending for a championship. And did Tyler Herro prove that yesterday? Tyler Herro, in my opinion, played one of his best games, if not the best game of his career so far in the NBA, scoring 24 points for the Miami Heat on 7 for 13 shooting and made 6 out of his 11 threes. He was absolutely incredible shooting the ball. But what's stood out to me with Tyler Herro was not only his shot creation and shot making, it was his role as a point guard, a role as a distributor, as Tyler Herro had 14 assists. He was moving the offense for Miami. He was generating, as I mentioned earlier, the 23 open looks that Miami got from the three-point line against Boston. And Boston is a number 2 rated defense, and Tyler Herro teared that defense down in TD Garden the other day. And I have never seen Tyler Herro play like that. Personally, watching that Miami Heat team, he really hasn't been healthy, and he really hasn't had the opportunity to play like that because he's never been in the lineup consistently, and he finally gets his opportunity. He's in the lineup consistently. He's in the postseason. Butler's out. You are now the primary scorer, and you have an opportunity to show the world against what most people thought of the most dominant and best team in the league this season, what you really are about. And did Tyler Herro show it? It was absolutely incredible. Then Caleb Martin, the guy who destroyed the Celtics' souls last year in the Eastern Conference Finals. He did it again for the Miami Heat. Caleb Martin scored 21 points in this one, hitting 5 of 6 threes. And I think he took it a little bit personally when obviously Boston and their announcers called code red on Caleb Martin's play at the end of the game against Jason Tatum. Obviously, most people believe that that was not a dirty play, but the announcers for Boston really made that a little bit more than it needed to be. And Caleb took that a little bit personally, and he absolutely showed out in Boston just like he did last year. He was huge for the Miami Heat in this game. And just looking down the roster, you've got Jovic, Martin, Adebayo, of course, Herro, Jaquez, Love, Robinson, Highsmith, and DeLon Wright. And Boston lost to this team at home in a playoff game, which was winnable. That's a concern for the Boston Celtics. If I'm looking at this going to the Boston Celtics side right now, it's a little bit concerning considering the fact that this should have been a sweep. I'm a Heat fan, but this should have been a sweep. Boston is the far better team, and no matter how mentally tough Miami is, no matter how many dogs they have on their team, no matter Bam Adebayo plays a great game, Miami should have been swept in this series, and Boston should have played every game like they played game one because they are just they're just way more talented than this Miami Heat team. And what we didn't consider in this matchup was Miami's defense letting Tatum and Brown not necessarily do their thing, but they were locking them down a little bit. And letting Porzingis, not Tatum and Brown, Porzingis do their thing. They were keying in on Tatum and Brown, and they were letting Porzingis do whatever he wanted, basically, and and Miami said, hey, Kristaps, beat us. You have to beat us, Porzingis. We know what Tatum and Brown can do. Those two are bad dudes in the postseason because we've seen it before as a team. Porzingis, you've been on Dallas. You've been on Washington. You haven't been in the postseason that long. Prove it. We know we're the less talented team. Porzingis, you're going to have to beat us. We're going to have to give up something, and we're willing to give the shots up to you. And Porzingis played a terrible game, probably his worst game all season with the Boston Celtics on Wednesday night, as he had 6 points, shot 1 for 9 from the field, 0 for 4 from the three-point line, hit 4 free throws, and was a minus 32 in the game, which is the lowest plus-minus of any Boston Celtics player this season, other than the New York Knicks game, which was at the end of the season, and Boston wasn't really playing their starters. But this is the lowest plus-minus out of any Boston starter all season long. Concerning? I think so, because we know that this Boston team has such high expectations. I have high expectations for this team. This team should win a championship this season. I'm not saying there's excuses. Like if they lose to Denver, okay, Denver's been great. They're about to sweep the Lakers. But if they don't make the finals and they don't get out of an Eastern Conference with the Bucks Giannis Antetokounmpo being injured, with Joel Embiid not being 100%, with the Knicks, who haven't been that outstanding this season. They've had great moments, but they haven't been that outstanding. Be the second seed this year, have Miami, not have Butler. This is all yours for the taking, Boston. And you're letting a Miami Heat team without Jimmy Butler and their best player, without Terry Rozier and one of their top 4 best players, hang in with you and potentially make this more of a series than it needs to be. I'm not saying it should be super danger mode yet for the Boston Celtics, but Boston should have taken care of business, and they should have swept this team. And now this could linger into a 6, maybe even a 7-game series. Who knows with this Miami Heat team now? Because Miami, I believe, definitely figured out something with letting Porzingis prove it and really attacking their 3-point shooters and not letting Boston get any 3-point shots off. They really had a great game plan going in, and now Porzingis is going to have to step up to the plate. And do we completely trust Porzingis yet? Whether that's with his health, whether that's with his ability to perform on the court in the postseason, because we haven't seen it yet. It is a prove it league, and in the NBA, you're going to have to prove what you're worth. We didn't think Jokic was all that great in the postseason. When he won his back-to-back MVPs, we were questioning why he was getting these back-to-back MVPs, because we've never seen success from him in the postseason, and he proved it last year, and now we're not questioning him. And not only are we not questioning him, we say he's probably the best player in the league right now. And Porzingis could probably become a top 15, top 20 kind of a guy if he proves it. And this game where Miami said prove it, he did not prove it, and that is definitely a concern going down the stretch. Also a concern for the Boston Celtics. Tatum, of course, had a great game, 28 points, 41 minutes, 10 for 20 from the field. But at the end of the game, in the second half, Tatum only scored 4 points. He scored 24 of his 24 points in the first half. And when you're Boston in the clutch, which is something throughout the years in the postseason, especially last year, Boston has had problems with. And Tatum's not getting the ball, and Tatum's not hitting shots. Don't you think that is a level of concern? I'm not necessarily saying for this series, because obviously they should still get past the Miami Heat. But going down the stretch, when you have to play a tough New York Knicks team, when you have to play a potential Bucks team with maybe Giannis coming back, with Damian Lillard as well, a potential Denver Nuggets in the finals, don't you think that's a concern? Boston's performance in the clutch, because Boston was down 6 with a couple minutes to go. They had opportunities. Miami was missing shots, but Boston was also missing shots. They were getting stagnant on offense, and they were not giving the ball to Jason Tatum. And when Jason Tatum did get the ball, he didn't hit his shots. And quite frankly, that is a concern for the Boston Celtics, and we've had this for years. And it's just so painful, all these concerns that we have with the Boston Celtics, because it's like every single time we say, this is the year Boston. This is the year they're finally going to get through. They're going to win a title. There is no flaws with this team. They prove us wrong again, and Boston has flaws, and Boston is a beatable team, and we just saw it in Game 2. I'm still picking Boston in the series. It's not panic time yet, but there is definitely concern going down the stretch in the later rounds. Definitely a concern, because trust me, if this Miami Heat team had Jimmy Butler right now, oh man, would this be a different conversation about Boston potentially going down. But Boston got very, very lucky, and Butler is not playing for this Miami Heat team, because if he was, this could have been a whole different conversation. Also for the Boston Celtics, Jrue Holiday, Derek White, they need to step up for the Boston Celtics. Jrue Holiday, we know what he can do. We saw it last year in Milwaukee. Obviously, you have to take less of a role on the offensive side, considering you've got Tatum, Brown, and Porzingis, and Derek White. And in Milwaukee, you only had Giannis and a not healthy Chris Middleton. So Jrue Holiday had to sometimes be that second option on the offensive side of the ball. I think Jrue Holiday needs to get a little bit more touches for this Boston Celtics team. I know he took 12 shots, which is the third most on the team that in Game 2. But considering most of those shots were inside the paint shots, not really looking for a lot on his isolation game, not looking to create his own jumper, create his own space off the dribble, I think they need to give Jrue Holiday an opportunity to potentially be more in the offense. I think that's an adjustment Joe Mazzulla needs to make, because when you're considering if Porzingis is not continuing not to play good games, something else has to work for Boston, because they have the players, and it could cause an even bigger problem if Jrue Holiday is playing good, because then what do? Do you let Porzingis beat you? Do you let Holiday beat you? it's tough when you're considering this, that Holiday has not stepped up to the plate so far for Boston, because if he did, this series would be over in 4. Derek White, he's played okay. He hasn't played his best, but for what we've seen this season from Derek White, we should expect a little more. And the bench guys, that's a concern for Boston too. The bench guys aren't that great either. They had great game 1s. Don't get me wrong. Hauser, Pritchard, Horford all had great game 1s, but when you need some of those guys to make some shots, when you're surrounded by great basketball players such as Tatum and Brown, and when one of those guys are in the game with those 3 guys off the bench, and the big scoring options have to take a breather for a little bit, those guys have to score. Those guys have to contribute off the bench, or else Miami is going to get on a run, and Miami is going to come back in games that they are not supposed to be in, and that's what happened here. This time it was not Miami being down. Miami was up, but Boston had opportunities to take the lead back, and then Miami just pushed it, whether that was in the late third quarter, pushing it to a double-digit lead. Second quarter, making it from Boston being down 6 to Miami now up 5. This bench has to help this Boston Celtics team on the scoring side of the ball, because we never know what Miami can do. Everyone's saying, oh, Miami, this was a fluke. Yeah, they had a great shooting night. Well, guess what? In the playoffs, Miami has a lot of great shooting nights. Coincidence from what we've seen from the Miami Heat in the past? I think not. So Boston's going to have to make some adjustments. I think that starts with getting Jrue Holiday more involved with the offense and getting the bench production a little bit up to cause some problems on the defensive end, giving more room for the Tatums and the Browns of the world to attack the basket. But concern for Boston? Absolutely. Am I picking Miami to pull off the upset? Not yet. But game 3 will be huge. And if you're Boston, you need to make a response, and you need to show the world on the road why you are the best team in basketball. And if you don't, and you go down 2-1, oh boy, the chitter chatter will start raising exponentially, because this could get crazy, and this could be a major storyline if Boston goes down 2-1 still without home court. So game 3 is going to be huge for Boston, and they are going to need to make a statement there. But this is very, very interesting. Miami has done it once again, and you've got to give credit to the Miami Heat in this particular scenario. Even though we're criticizing Boston for what they could have done, Miami did hit the shots, and you've got to give them credit. They played a great game considering who they don't have and who they do have on their current roster. Miami played a great game, and if they continue like this, they can make this series interesting. So you got to give a little bit of credit to Miami as well. But let's go on from this crazy series, and let's go on to a little bit of a less competitive series and more of a blowout kind of a series, where the Oklahoma City Thunder absolutely destroyed the New Orleans Pelicans at home on Wednesday night, defeating them by 32 points, 124-92, after a very close scare in game 1, which was, I think, the Thunder, if I'm not mistaken, won 94-92, where CJ McCollum missed a 3 for the win. This time, instead of scoring 94, the Oklahoma City Thunder scored 124, and it was just a way better offensive game. I think Oklahoma City had a little bit of the jitters in game 1, and they got those a little bit out of the way. And they absolutely played Thunder basketball, and they played the basketball that we've seen this year. And that could have been that's definitely a concern when you're looking at a young team going into the postseason. Can they sustain the success they had in the regular season? Because some young teams are just not ready for the playoffs, and they haven't been in that situation before where teams elevate their game in the postseason. So it was definitely brought up, and that's why many people don't have the Thunder going to the conference finals. That's why many people have the Thunder as an early exit in the second round. You don't trust young teams in the postseason because, as I mentioned, it's a prove-it league, and they have not proved it so far because they're young, and it's not their fault, but they just haven't been in the situation before. But they absolutely showed their regular season success right in this game, absolutely dominating from finish to finish. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had 33 and 5 in the blowout win. Of course, he was playing like he always does, dominant scoring, great distributor, and a great defender on and off the ball. In this stat, let me give you a stat for the Oklahoma City Thunder in this one. If I'm not mistaken, this is the 4th largest playoff victory in their franchise history. 32 points. I mean, that is ridiculous. 32 points in the playoff game. I don't care who's on the court for the Pelicans. That is embarrassing. You cannot lose by 32 in a postseason game, which is quite frankly, a game that you probably needed to have and a game that you desperately wish you could have played better in, because now you're down 2-0 and you've got to win both games in New Orleans to make the series interesting. But of course, the one game New Orleans probably should have had was game one, especially considering that it was the Thunder's first game, as I just mentioned. A little jittery, young, not really had this playoff experience before. If the Pelicans got that game, they could have made the series interesting. But since they lost that game, Thunder a little bit into it now, it looks like this series could potentially be a quick series, just like the Lakers and Nuggets series. Also, for the Oklahoma City Thunder, Chet Holmgren had a great first quarter, setting the tone for the Oklahoma City Thunder. He scored 15 out of 26 in the first. And what I really like about Chet for this Oklahoma City Thunder team, what I've liked about him all year, and I had him in the Rookie of the Year conversations for most of the season, actually, until Wembanyama went on that tear at the end. Then it was pretty much all said and done there. But Chet Holmgren really opens up this offense for the Thunder because he's such a threat inside the paint. He's a stretch big as well. And if he's a threat in the paint, he's getting the ball in the paint. The defense collapsed. Thunder hit a wide open three. Lou Dort hits an open three. Isaiah Joe hits an open three. Jalen Williams hits threes. He opens up the offense when he's on the post and as he's a stretch big as well, just like Boston does with Porzingis. It just gives them another weapon, because when Chase and Holmgren go with the screen in action, you got to double Shea, because when Shea gets off that screen, his jumper is basically automatic. And then if you do double him, now you've got Chet at the top wide open for a three. And even if you potentially come and contest the shot, Chet could still probably get the shot over you because of his height. And even if you do beat Chet, another swing pass, a wide open three for another person. So this offense is really, really elevated itself with Chet Holmgren. And that's made me think a little bit with Chet Holmgren and Porzingis about the state of the NBA on the offensive side of the ball. Is the big man, the stretch big man now, a key factor in having an elite offense? Maybe. And I'm going to look into a little bit of that this offseason after the playoffs end. But it's quite interesting that both of those teams now got stretch bigs and their offenses have completely elevated to a different level. We know Boston's offense was still great because obviously you've got Tatum and Brown, but that elevated as well. And Chet Holmgren elevated OKC's offense to where they got it to the 1 seed. So that's a very interesting topic and a very interesting little nugget there. But back to the game here. Chet Holmgren was absolutely incredible. He is a huge reason why the Thunder won this game by a lot of points. Also, Lou Dort was a key for the Thunder in this game, as he has been defending Ingram, and he has been defending Brandon Ingram quite to perfection, only allowing him to score 15 points per game in 2 games. And when the Pelicans' best player is scoring 15 points per game, because we know that Zion Williamson is out, the Thunder are going to win this series. If the Thunder continue to play the defense like they have, hold a team to 92 points in the postseason, considering what kind of offense we've had. 92 points is not a lot of points. And in 2 games, to do it 2 games in a row for the Thunder, absolutely just incredible, and absolutely just just the way they've actually improved this season has just been mind-boggling, and the way that they've improved on both sides of the ball, mind-boggling. And Lou Dort is a huge part of that, and especially in this series, guarding Brandon Ingram, and he stopped him as well. And on for the Pelicans aspect, as I just said, Brandon Ingram's not playing that well, and you need Brandon Ingram to play well. You need another guy like CJ McCollum to play well as well. Also, considering the fact that Zion is out, and Zion was playing very, very solid basketball, arguably his best basketball of his career before he got out and injured in the Lakers playing game. And now that he's not there, you've got to have your best players step up. This is playoff time, baby. You need your best players to step up. And we've seen not necessarily Brandon Ingram, but CJ McCollum. We know what that man can do in the postseason. We saw it with Portland. We saw the huge series he had against Denver. We've seen huge series that he's had in the past. And he's got to show it now, because I think the Pelicans could have made and can still potentially make this series a little bit interesting if they win both their games at home, which is possible because, the Thunder are a young and inexperienced team. They're playing great, but I think the Pelicans can hang with them, considering we've seen CJ McCollum have these 50-point games in the playoffs before. We know what Brandon Ingram can do. We've seen Valanciunas have success in the postseason. Also, this team could hang in with the Thunder team, and with the best players not playing good, you're just bound to get eliminated early, and that is a concern for the Pelicans, and we saw it so far, whether that was in the play-in tournament and now in the playoffs. So that's definitely a concern, especially that could linger into the offseason if the Pelicans have a disappointing finish to this series. And what I liked about this game, too, for Oklahoma City was the fact that it was a much faster paced game. OKC thrives on the fast paced game. And if you're New Orleans, you need to slow the game down because you know OKC likes to go fast. And when you slow the game down in game one, a low scoring game, not a lot of calls, just action back and forth, just not just the game's going by fast, but the pace is going by slow. That is a recipe for success for the New Orleans Pelicans, and they should have, in my opinion, won that game in game one. But of course they didn't. And now the Thunder made it their own pace, and we saw what happened. They're the much better team and look like a 1 seed, and the Pelicans look like an 8 seed. But if the Pelicans can play their pace, their game, they can definitely make this series interesting. And it's just hard because the whole team struggled without Zion on the court. Can they pull off the upset? I'm going to say no. So far, I still have Thunder in 5 right now, but the Pelicans could make it interesting. We'll see and wait what happens. Now let's move on to probably our most non-entertaining series of this postseason. The Orlando Magic and the Cleveland Cavaliers were Orlando. My goodness, you thought a 32-point game was big? A 38-point victory by the Orlando Magic against the Cleveland Cavaliers after looking god-awful and garbage against the Cleveland Cavaliers in games 1 and 2. And now at home, they made a statement and they are officially back in this series with an opportunity to tie the series in game 4 on the weekend. And in this game, the Magic absolutely put on a barrage and a show in the third quarter. And if I'm not mistaken, before garbage time, I think this Magic team was up by 50 points in the playoff game. I'll repeat that. 50 points in a playoff game. That is absolutely wow. That is a lot of points, and that is just shocking considering the way we saw Orlando go into Cleveland and play in those first 2 games. But you can see what happens when these Orlando Magic players can score the basketball, can shoot the basketball. They can win games significantly because of their defense. Their defense is incredible. They've held Cleveland under 110, I think, in all of these games. Maybe one game it was like 111 or something. Oh no, they've held Cleveland to under 100 in the first 2 games. And now this game, we know Orlando's defense is good. We know Orlando's defense is going to be great. And if they can have an offensive barrage like they did in this game, here's the result. They won by 38. Obviously it won't be a 38-point game every single time, but the fact that Orlando showed that they have the offensive ability to win this series shows a lot because I was doubting on them. Like I just picked Cleveland. I switched my pick to Cleveland in 5, and I'm still going to pick that until Orlando gives me another game. But still, Orlando showed that they have the potential to win this series because of how good they were on the offensive side of the ball. They played much better. They shot 50% from the field rather than the abysmal 35 in Cleveland. They shot 35% from the 3 rather than the abysmal 25% from 3 in Cleveland. Just a much better overall game on the offensive side of the ball. And it just shows if the Magic can hit their shots, they are a quality basketball team that can play with the East's best teams. And I know role players do play better at home, and it definitely showed in this game in Orlando. But still, the fact that the Magic are generating some offense, just a miracle, just something that I did not expect to see, and they showed it, and they are back in this series. For this game, Paolo Banchero had 31 points and 14 rebounds, the youngest ever to record 30 points and 10 rebounds in a playoff game since LeBron James did it in 2006. What an incredible accomplishment for Paolo Banchero there. And for Paolo Banchero, getting into his game a little bit specifically on how he elevated this Magic team in Game 3, he was hitting 3-point shots, Banchero. Banchero struggled mightily in the 3-point line in the first couple of games in the series. I think he only shot 25%, if I'm not mistaken, from beyond the arc. And if he can get going from there like he did in this game, shooting 50% from the 3, he is a huge threat because we know how good Paolo Banchero is off the drive. We know how good he is at drawing fouls, attacking the basket, setting up for players on his drives. It's absolutely amazing that he can do that, and that's why he was an all-star this year. But if Banchero can shoot threes, oh man, this guy can become a top 10 player next year. Next season, this man will be a top 10 player if he can develop a three-point shot. He might have to do it in this playoffs in order for the Magic to get past the series, but this man with the three-point shot and what I saw yesterday with him hitting threes, that is scary because when the defense goes up on him, he easily gets past the defender for easy opportunities at the basket, which is why Banchero had such success at the basket, shooting over 50% from the interior. And if I'm not mistaken, let me do the math here. I think he shot 9 for 17 from the interior, which is pretty good. And some of those shots were blocked, and which is why they counted as misses. But most times when he got in there, it was a pretty good success rate for Paolo Banchero. He drew fouls. He got to the rim, got easy ones, and it just flowed seamlessly. And it was just something that I really didn't see from Paolo Banchero, getting that easy looks at the paint. And it's because he hit threes. And if he can hit threes, and it can open up his interior game like that, he is a very scary threat for this Orlando Magic team. And also another thing about Paolo Banchero in this series, he had 9 turnovers in the first 2 games of this series, and he did not turn over the ball a single time in this game. Of course, first 2 games, you're second-year player, first time in the playoffs. We understand the jitters. I just mentioned that before with the OKC Thunder. We understand you're going to have a little bit of the jitters like I just did. But the fact that he managed the ball, looked like the best player out there, hit three-point shots, got to his options at the basket. He looked like a top 10 player in the league yesterday. And if he can consistently do that, look out for the Magic in the future, and look out for the Magic in this series and potentially giving Boston a problem, because they did give Boston some problems in the past few years. If Boston were to win that series, of course, as I mentioned, it's not over. Miami still got a chance. But if they were to play Boston, which most people think, if whoever wins the Cleveland-Orlando series, they could cause Boston some trouble if they're hitting shots, because they can potentially find ways with their defense to limit that Boston offense. So look out for Orlando. On Cleveland's side, it's a bad game. I mean, 83 points, that's just unacceptable. You've got to find ways to score the ball, and it's harder on the road, just like Orlando. It's hard on the road, but Cleveland just didn't show up for this one, and I hope to have a better performance from them in the next game. But let's move on from that game, and let's go to another classic game between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Knicks, where the New York Knicks give up a game against the Philadelphia 76ers as Philly wins 125-114 in what was another hectic game. This time instead of Madison Square Garden in New York, it was in Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia. And now it is a 2-1 series lead for the New York Knicks as Philly gets on the board. This game, let me tell you, this game had tensions all over it. This game was absolutely crazy. Embiid got into it with DiVincenzo to start the game. Of course, we know what happened with Joel Embiid pulling down Mitchell Robinson, a controversial call there. Could that have potentially been a flagrant 2? And could that have potentially changed the outcome of this basketball game instead of it just being a flagrant 1? I'm not going to really get into that today because I want to talk about the game and how Philadelphia responded themselves. But that is very interesting how Embiid got away with that, because other players may have not necessarily gotten away with that. And that's something that I hold strongly about the NBA. But that's a topic for the offseason or next season, because that's I want to get into the games, but that's just something that doesn't really sit right with me. But going to the game, of course, Joel Embiid, when he claimed after game 2 when they were down 0-2 that the Sixers were going to win the series, oh boy, did he try to make his case, scoring a playoff high so far, and I'm not mistaken, his playoff career high, 50 points, a 50-piece chicken nugget dinner on the New York Knicks, and he was 13 of 19 from the field, very efficient from there, and from the free throw line, he was 19 for 21 from the free throw line. He shot 21 free throws, which was more than the entire Knicks team in total, which only shot 19 free throws, and Philadelphia went to the line 33 times, so there was definitely a disparity in the free throws, and that was a huge reason why Philadelphia pulled off the win in this game, because New York, quite frankly, a lot of people thought that Philadelphia was going to make a statement in this game. New York was hanging in. New York in the first half was winning. New York looked like they were clicking. They got up to as much as 8, if I'm not mistaken, and they looked like they had opportunities to really extend the lead, really take control of this game and get a commanding 3-0 lead. But Philadelphia at home with the crowd, with the role players playing just a little bit better, not necessarily that much better, but just a little bit better, responded and did get the win at the end. And they came back and they did hold on after the Knicks cut it to within 6 under a minute to go after Philly was up 15. Philly did hold on and won by 11 points there. And speaking of Embiid, breaking news by Shams, he was dealing with Bell's palsy, which is some like face issue, like lingering with the face on one half of the face since the play-in win over Miami. And just the fact that you've got to give credit to Joel Embiid, because just the fact that he has been playing with this injury, which we've clearly seen on the court, is bothering him, just not more than just a little bit. And now this as well. Joel Embiid for staying on the court and fighting through this, knowing that he wants to win. He wants to win playoff games and have playoff success because he's never been to the conference finals and he wants to get there. And he definitely has an opportunity if he wins the series to do so, considering the Milwaukee Bucks haven't been playing their best basketball and the Pacers are a young and inexperienced team. And the fact that Embiid is going through this, you've got to give him credit there. And 50 points through all of it. So Joel Embiid just proving himself once again as one of the best players in the league. And that was absolutely remarkable. And why Philadelphia won this game, of course, Joel Embiid's 50 absolutely helped. But the role players stepped up a little bit in this one. They had 2 good games from 2 particular role players. Kelly Oubre Jr. had a great game, scoring 15 points, 6 for 8 shooting, 2 for 4 from the three-point line. He was huge in the Philadelphia 76ers win. And someone who hasn't really played as a reason for Philadelphia, Cameron Payne, who was traded in Philadelphia for Patrick Beverley. Then Kyle Lowry was signed from Philadelphia, so he didn't really get the opportunity to have that much playing time with Philadelphia ever since Embiid and Lowry have Embiid come back and Lowry's joined this team. Cameron Payne really hasn't had that playing time, and he absolutely balled out for this Philadelphia 76ers team. And that's what you need if you're Philadelphia. You need somebody other than Joel Embiid, somebody other than Tyrese Maxey to step up, because that's why the Knicks lost those first 2 games. We know what Maxey and Embiid can do. Those 2 are absolute ballers. Embiid, MVP. Maxey, all-star. Somebody else for Philly, not only somebody else, but at least 2 players a game are going to have to step up for this Philadelphia 76ers team. And 2 players stepped up in this one, and that is the reason why they got the win. Because without those guys playing efficient, being +9, +7 on the court, this Philadelphia 76ers team would have not won this basketball game. And it is huge for them because we know how much potential this team has and how far this team could potentially make a run if they get back in the series. And it's going to be up to the role players because we know what the Embiid Maxey duo can do there. Now for the New York Knicks, talking about them this game. It was one game. Of course, it's really hard to beat a Philadelphia 76ers team with Embiid, with Maxey 3 times in a row. That would have been absolutely incredible. And we would have opened our ears a little bit to the potential of New York, quite may I say it, winning the Eastern Conference and upsetting Boston. Not necessarily yet. We got to see how the rest of the series goes. But the New York Knicks really made a great effort in the first 2 games, and it was bound for them to lose. I'm not really surprised. It's one game, but now they have the opportunity in game 4 to make their adjustments, to come back stronger and close out the series going up 3-1, going to game 5 in New York and ending it there. They have the opportunity to do that, but Philadelphia has the opportunity to go 2-2, and this game 4 is going to be very interesting with just as much hype, just as much tension in the crowd, tension in the game as Game 3 was, and it's going to be an absolute showcase for all of these teams, for both of these teams here. And it's going to be a very exciting game. I'm still picking the Sixers in the series. I've always think that Philly is the better team than New York, considering New York's injury with Randall. I still think Philadelphia is the better team, and once they get healthy, and I believe in their role players as well. I know and seen what Kyle Lowry has done. I've seen Kelly Oubre all season long. I've seen what Nick Batum has done, especially in that playing game against Miami. I've seen Paul Reed have good games. I know what Buddy Hield can do. He is an absolute a sharp shooter and an elite scorer. I trust these Philly role players, and I trust Philadelphia, even though necessarily it's been hard to trust them in postseason because of what disappointing finishes they've had over the years and haven't made a conference finals in this Joel Embiid era. But this year just feels a little bit different. And that is why I'm still rolling with Philadelphia, but it should be a great series and a great game 4. So we'll be recapping that probably on Monday. Stay tuned for that. That is going to be an exciting game 4. But let's move on to our last game and a disappointing finish of the season for the Lakers because the Lakers are getting swept. The Lakers are going to get swept as, once again, for the third time in this series in 3 possible games, they blew, yes, another double-digit lead, and this time it was at home, losing to the Denver Nuggets 112-105, and now the Nuggets have taken a commanding 3-0 series lead, and the Lakers look to be done, and their season looks to be absolutely over, and it is definitely coming to an end. For this basketball game in the first half, it just looked like any other Lakers Nuggets game. The Lakers were in control in the first half. They were playing great. They were running the offense through LeBron and AD. They were getting their baskets. They were playing great. Gabe Vincent got a couple of scores. Austin Reeves really asserted himself in this game, the most I've seen him assert himself so far in this postseason. They were all great. Lakers had a first half lead. Same thing as the other games. And then here comes the Denver Nuggets once again. And in this win, all of Gordon, Porter, Jokic, Murray had 20 points or more. And in the third quarter, they were absolutely dominant, outscoring the Lakers 34-22. And it's just so hard to beat this Denver team. I understand that the fact that the Lakers have lost 11 straight, it might be 12 now after this loss, but it's really hard to beat this Denver Nuggets team. And you've got to give Denver a lot of credit. Jokic has been playing great. Murray has been playing great. And the other guys, Gordon, Porter, and KCP have been playing great. And for this Denver Nuggets team, so far, even though we have concerns about their bench, especially with the departure of Jeff Green and Bruce Brown, their starting lineup so far in this round and maybe potentially the next round could just carry them to the win. They may not need the production they got from the bench so far in this playoffs that they did last year in a series like the finals where Christian Braun had a great game, Jeff Green had a great game, Bruce Brown had a great game. They don't need that yet. And their starting lineup has carried them, and that's really all they need to win these basketball games because that starting five is just so dominant up front and on the with Jokic, Murray, no, not Jokic, Gordon, and Porter on the wing, Gordon and Jokic on the inside, and the guards of Murray and KCP, absolutely dominant starting five. And it's just so hard to beat them. So even though we're dissing on the Lakers, you've got to give a lot of credit to this Denver team, and they really deserve all the praise. And it's hard to beat a team 12 times in a row. And it's really hard to beat a team 12 times in a row when the other team's got arguably one of the best players of all time in LeBron James. So you've got, Denver deserves all the praise given to them. It's a new season, but still, Denver, a lot of credit for them sweeping a team with LeBron James and the same Lakers team for the second year in a row because, yes, this will be a sweep. I don't care what people say. Lakers are not winning game 4. They're done. I saw it. They're done. You look at the bench in the Lakers huddle in that timeout, D'Angelo Russell wasn't even in the huddle. He was sitting on the bench. He was ignoring the Los Angeles Lakers huddle. He was out of the way. The Lakers were huddling. He looked out of it after he had an abysmal game, 0 for 6 shooting. From the 3, 0 for 7 shooting overall, absolutely abysmal for D'Angelo Russell. He was sitting on the side of the bench, and that is absolutely inexcusable if you're D'Angelo Russell. And you can just tell right now that the chemistry, togetherness, of this Los Angeles Lakers team is broken, and it has been broken once again by the Denver Nuggets. And for D'Angelo Russell, going back to him a little bit specifically, dude, you've got to step up in the postseason. 0 for 7. 0 for 7 in a game where you must win. Unacceptable. 0 points? Really? 0 points? We saw it last year. Everybody criticized last year, and much deserved criticism. You had a great regular season. You had a great playing tournament. You had a great game, too, against this Denver team. And now in the game the Lakers probably need you the most, you don't show up. You just don't do anything? Really? I don't even know what to say because he played so good in the regular season, but he's got to go. He's got to go there. He's not the point guard. He is not the point guard. That A point guard doesn't score 0 points, doesn't distribute the ball, and make the team worse, not only on the court, but off the court. That is not a starting point guard right there. He's got to go this offseason. They are going to have to trade D'Angelo Russell. I'll get a little bit more deep into that in the Lights Out Lakers, which will probably be Monday, considering they will be getting swept. But overall, I mean, just abysmal for the Lakers. They just looked really, really out of it. And it's been the same story over and over and over again for this Lakers team against the Denver Nuggets. And it's just a concern. This Lakers team is quite frankly not good enough. And the lingering question that we are going to have for the Los Angeles Lakers is, of course, LeBron James is going into free agency. So what's going to happen there? We've got the Bronny aspect, of course. That's an interesting storyline, but obviously I'll talk a little bit more about that into deeper detail in our Lights Out Lakers video, which will probably be Monday, maybe Wednesday at the latest. But if the Denver Nuggets now, as I said, they're moving on to the second round. They are most likely playing the winner of Phoenix, Minnesota, and that most likely winner will be Minnesota. That should be a great series. But Phoenix has time to come back still. They've got to win Game 3, of course, which will be tonight. But Phoenix still has an opportunity to come back. But going back to Denver a little bit, what makes Denver so great is the fact that Aaron Gordon just really opens up their offense on the dunker spot. You've got, as I mentioned, Nikola Jokic getting the ball, double teamed because he's such a big threat scoring. You've got Murray double teamed attacking downhill. You've got Porter double teamed attacking downhill. Gordon's just sitting there right in the dunking spot for the taking. It just opens up their offense so much because if you double from the interior, Gordon, wide open dunk. You don't double, easy shot for the Denver Nuggets stars. And it just really makes this Denver Nuggets offense unstoppable when one of their guys beats the first defender or Jokic is in the paint and it's just he's too deep into the paint. It is unstoppable, that Denver Nuggets offense at times. And you've got to give them a lot of credit. And that's the reason why Gordon had such a great game today. Every single time the Lakers tried to guard Jokic, instead of now guarding him one-on-one where he was dominating previously, they were now doubling, which is why Gordon got so many opportunities in the dunker spot. And he played an absolutely incredible game with 29 points. Great game by Aaron Gordon. And I mean, for the Lakers, what's now, man? What do you do now? You've had this team that swept it 2 years in a row, probably. What's next for the Los Angeles Lakers? Because this team's just not good enough. And I don't know if there's a player that they can trade for that's going to be good enough. And that's going to be an interesting storyline going on in the offseason, and especially LeBron being a free agent there. So that is going to be a story to look out for in the offseason. And that is all the time I have for you today. That is everything I wanted to get into today. Thank you so much for watching the show. Remember, please follow me on Instagram at take_your_shot_podcast_. Again, that's at take_your_shot_podcast_. And tell me how you would have taken your shots on these takes. That's all my shots for the day. Please remember to leave a like and subscribe on YouTube. It absolutely means the world to me. From my greatest fans to me, I absolutely love it. Thank you so much for supporting me. Share the video, do something with it. I want to grow, and I love you all for doing it. Thank you so much for watching the Take a Shot podcast, and I'll see you next week. Enjoy the weekend of NBA games because it's about to be exciting action for Game 3s and Game 4s. Have a great weekend, folks, and see you.